Okay, let's run.
Your mission, should you choose to accept it.
It's a quest. It's a quest for fun.
Well, The Rock says, why don't we just cut right to the chase?
Okay, now he wants to get together. Well, he wants to talk.
I want you to do me a favor. I want you to tell all your friends about me.
It's showtime, folks!
What are you?
Greetings and salutations. Welcome to And I Quote, the weekly show where we introduce you to content creators of all shapes and sizes that join us from many and all corners of the nerd universe. We find out more about them and we take your questions. I am your host, Ryan of Nerd Culture, and our guest this week is someone who's a fan of both the wars, the Trek, and pretty much anything else that fits within a sci-fi or sci-fi fantasy basket. She's even got the Grogu plushie to speak for it. But even so, please welcome Adeena Mignogna. Adeena, welcome to the program. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for being with us. We do greatly appreciate it. Now, if you have any questions for Adeena throughout the course of this episode, whether you're watching us live or on the replay, please let us know in the comments. Let us know in the chat. Our producer is going to be keeping an eye on it as we go throughout the course of this very broadcast. And don't forget to like and share this video with all of your closest friends. So to start things off, Adeena, I know this question is going to be difficult to answer, but I'll throw it out to you anyway. What were some of your favorite books or writers growing up?
So book, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, hands down. And I count that as my favorite book only because it's the one that I've read and reread and reread. I don't normally reread books. There's just too much new stuff. But so absolutely Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. But as authors, Isaac Asimov is probably my favorite. And I'll never finish, reading all of his stuff. He's got like 400, almost 500 books.
All right. Good points. Any favorite movies or TV series, past or present, that stand out to you?
Well, you said it, in the intro, Star Trek. All the Star Trek series. I'm a fan of all of it. I don't say everything is perfect. I can certainly talk about critics and critiques of different individual episodes or things, but I generally love it all. I'm so happy for it all. I grew up knowing about the original series. It was just on in the background in syndication, and my dad was a fan. But then Next Generation came out when I was a teenager, so that's like my core Star Trek. But even before that, when I was young, at 6 is about when I started getting exposed to Star Wars and the first Star Wars movie. So I grew up completely in love with R2-D2 and C-3PO. So those are of course the highlights. But as a kid growing up in the 80s, there wasn't tons of science fiction to go around in movies and TV. Not like there is right now, not like there is today. But I devoured any of it. I've seen everything at least once, maybe not.
All good. No problem with that. Now, when did you decide to become a writer?
So I started noodling in the creative writing area in high school. I don't know if it was because I took a creative writing class that was offered in school, or I was interested and then saw the class. I'm not exactly sure what started what, but I took creative writing in high school. It was just a half-year class. And in college, I took a semester of creative writing. And I had this idea that I would write short stories and send them to magazines, like back in the day, how all the great science fiction authors, that's mostly how all of them started. And I thought that I was going to write stories. And I started getting a little more serious about it, maybe when I was 25, 26. And by serious, meaning I finished a story or two and submitted them to publications to have them rejected. And for the longest time, I labored under the assumption that I couldn't write a novel, that it was really just going to be short stories. And I kept starting new stories and finishing very few and kind of slow going, partly because I have a day job and a career, but partly because it's really hard to finish. Starting is not necessarily difficult. And I think a lot of people in this situation, we all have ideas, we all start or something, but finishing is really hard. But I did sell one or two short stories to like magazines that no one's ever heard of and that are no longer in business. But then in 2012, Nope, I'm sorry, 2009. Yeah, 2009 is when I learned about NaNoWriMo, which is the National Novel Writing Month. And I was like, oh, might as well try it, see what I can do. And yeah, it was interesting because I did learn that yeah, I could write 50,000 words in a month. Now, what I wrote in 2009 was the worst 50,000 words I've ever written and will never see the light of day. But the fact that I could do it, it kind of was like, huh, maybe I can do it. And 2011 was not, I didn't really do much. Oh yeah. So 2010, I did something. 2011, my dad was dying. No better way to say that. So it was not exactly a writing month. But then 2012, I wrote something, and I won NaNoWriMo in the sense that I completed the 50,000 words, but I let it sit for a few years. And I did other challenges and other things, working on short stories. And at some point in like 2018 or so, 2018, 2019, I was like, I got to pick one thing and finish it. And so I went back to the 2012 one, and that became my current series, which I've got 3 books out. Book 4 is coming out at the end of May. Yeah, the rest is history, or something like that.
Well, congratulations on that.
That's where I began, and I think I gave you like the whole,
Yeah.
whole summary of the whole journey.
Yeah, the Adeena saga, because as we all know, every saga has a beginning. Does anyone remember that trailer? Because I do. I remember seeing that in the theater. Anyone remember that?
Mhm.
If you know what we're talking about, let us know in the comments. I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. I'm just saying. I mean, I'm wearing one of the shirts for Pete's sake. But even so, congratulations on that. It's interesting that you bring up something known as NaNoWriMo, which for those, once again, it's National Novel Writing Month. I actually participated in it last year for the very first time because I've had
good.
this idea in the back of my mind for a long time. I've always wanted to write a Western. I like Westerns. I'm a fan of the Eastwood, 310 to Yuma, things like that. I thought, I really want to write a Western because I like the times. There were outlaws. Things weren't sometimes things weren't so black and white. Sometimes things were gray. There was some gray in between. So I thought, what the hey? So, and by the way, anyone can do this. You can do this because your local libraries have NaNoWriMo workshops that are virtual or in person. Please check your local listings for this, by the way. I strongly recommend it. I participated in the virtual workshops, went to each of them. They went over each piece of how to piece together a story, whether it's the introduction, the character, the dialogue, and the ending of the story. It was basically like 4 or 5 weeks worth. And this isn't for everybody, but on some virtual workshops, they have you write for an hour and a half, and then you come back and then you share what you have so you can get some feedback on it.
And you don't have to participate in any workshop. You can just do this completely on your own. It's very flexible, meeting the needs of the individual in a lot of ways. But it's a challenge against yourself. Can you do it? And yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely is. And there's no right or wrong way to do it. You're right. You can do it on your own. You can do it in teams or groups. You can have workshops, anything. There's no right or wrong way to do it. There is no right or wrong way to do it. But I wrote mine. I actually, towards the end of the month, at the beginning of the following month, I got it done. And the feedback that I got from the workshops that I participated in virtually, this was virtually, the feedback I got was very surprising. It was more positive than I thought I was going to get because I've never really written a fully fleshed out story. I've written things here and there, but that was because you had to do them for school. You had to do it for college. You had to write those term papers, and you had to write those 5 or 6 page essays. Remember those days? Yeah, we were all there. Most of us were. And I didn't really care much for that. But when you're doing it on your own and you're putting together this universe, whatever the story may be, it's more fun that way. So at the end of it, I finished it. I had some people I had some friends of mine who just happened to be writers look it over. They said, hey, this is good, but you need to tighten this up, or you need to do this. So I got advice, and I took that. I went back, did revisions, and I did it. And then I sent it back to me like, this is much better. Now you got it tightened up. You got to structure here. This is good. So one of these days, and this is just right now, it's I hope to do it. It's not a guarantee, but I do hope to get it published. It's a short story. It's the first in a series of 2, if not 3. So it's going to be a trilogy. I know I wanted this to be a one and done, but at the end of the story, I thought it ends on a cliffhanger.
Well, that's what I thought this was going to be. I thought this was going to be one novel, but then as I was at some point, I was just like, no, this really isn't. And I split it up into 4. So, a trilogy in 4 parts.
A trilogy in 4 parts. Is that?
I didn't invent that. That's from Hitchhikers.
I was going to say. Okay, I was
I
like,
wish I invented that, but
I was gonna
I
say, where's
didn't.
she going with these numbers? But even so, it was fun. It was fun for me to write the story,
Mhm.
and I hope to get it published one day. But NaNoWriMo is a good way to get your feet wet. It really, really is. No matter
Yeah.
what you're writing, no matter how you want to go about it or present yourself, it's fine. Nothing
Yes.
wrong with it.
Yeah.
And once again, we're talking with Adeena here on this episode of And I Quote. Don't forget to like and share this episode with all of your closest friends. If you have any questions for her, let us know in the comments. Let us know in the chat as we go throughout the course of this episode. But aside from that, what would you say are some of the biggest rewards about being a writer, Adeena?
Getting to do things like this actually, and talking to people and giving them encouragement that they can do this too. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that have that thought in the back of their head, but don't know if they can or if they should or what. And so I really do like kind of paying it forward and helping other people. That's one. I don't know, just being able to tell people I'm a writer, I'm a science fiction writer. That's two. That's really cool too. Yeah, I don't know. There's just so many things. Well, those are two things. Those are two of the biggest things that come to mind. But the one thing is just the ideas keep coming. And now that I know I can write reasonable novels, like I just want to like go crazy and write like 20 of them or 50.
Those are some big numbers. On the flip side of the coin, though, what would you say are some of the biggest challenges about being a writer?
Well, I can interpret that question in several ways. One big challenge as an indie writer, especially, is making sure that people understand that, that I think we've been overcoming the kind of stigma against self-published or indie writers. I think we're at a point where like the stigma is going, but at first and several years ago, there was a big stigma like, oh, you're an indie or self-published writer. That obviously your stuff is unedited crap. And that's not true. And so, I would say that was hard at a point in time, but I think that's mostly gone. Although it is true that there is piles of crud out there, but I think it's obvious when you look at stuff whether the covers are professionally done, whether the editing, there's actually real editing behind there. So that's one. Two is the fact that I love to write. I really love it, and I don't have enough time to do it. So managing my time as a writer is a big deal. So I have a full-time day job. I've got young kids. I've got a family, so I can't just sit and write for 8 hours every day, which I would love to do if I could, or 4 hours. Write for 4 hours and then research for 4 hours. Yeah, that's what I would do if I could.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe one of these days I can pull something like that off. Yeah. Write your next Western 4 hours and then read Western novels for 4 hours, or read
Yeah.
something else. I don't know, because you get ideas
Yeah.
from all different kinds of
Mhm.
outlets, which
Yep.
that's not a problem.
Yeah, I read a lot, but people think I just read science fiction. I actually probably read only 25% fiction,
Mhm.
and most of that is science fiction. But then the other 75% is nonfiction, and I
Oh.
read a lot of different stuff because you get little snippets of here and there. And I was recently reading a book on whales. It was a nonfiction
Oh.
book on whales and conservation and that kind of thing, and there was this. She was describing some kind of museum thing that existed a while ago where it was actually in the hollowed out carcass. It was like a taxidermy whale, and they had a room in it. They had created a room, and I was like, ooh, I have ideas for what I'm going to do with that. So you get these little nuggets of just things from anywhere.
Possibilities are endless. All you got to do is take a look. It's in a book.
Yeah. Yep.
As our friendly neighborhood Reading Rainbow and LeVar Burton taught us. Speaking of Star Trek, he pulled double duty as a host of an award-winning children's show, and then he takes place by playing the Geordie LaForge on TNG. So good for you, LeVar. Multitasking, dude.
Yes.
Which isn't an easy thing to do, is multitasking. Being on two different hit shows at the same time. Oh,
yep. I didn't learn that Reading Rainbow, some of that was coincident until years later. It didn't occur, yeah, that is amazing that he was able to do that.
Mm-hmm. Did you know he actually put together an episode of Reading Rainbow where he describes his time on set of TNG?
Yes, I haven't seen it, but I'd heard of that, and I was like, when I first heard that, like, ooh, I wonder if that's like on YouTube. I should go find that. And I'm glad you're reminding me. I'm gonna like write a note down to find that later because
I was gonna say it is on YouTube.
Taking a note, Reading Rainbow, Star Trek,
Reading Rainbow Star Trek episode. Yeah. He basically gives you a tour of the set behind the scenes and tells you, what it means to him and the character he plays. And things like that. It is on YouTube and hashtag not sponsor. But hey, we're broadcasting on YouTube, so that's not a bad thing either. So there you go. The streams got crossed. You know, even though Egon keeps telling me don't cross.
You're
the
not
streams.
supposed to cross the screens.
Yeah, as he keeps telling us, why it could be bad.
Yes.
I'm a little fuzzy on the whole good bad thing. What do you mean bad? Talk about every part of your body being like totally torn apart from the inside out. Total platonic reversal. Okay, that's bad. All right, thanks, Egon. Sorry, I couldn't help it. It's an 80s movie. It's classic.
Okay.
And I just rewatched it not too long ago. The first 45 minutes of that OG Ghostbusters film are some of the funniest bits I've ever seen in my life.
I'm pretty sure I saw that in the theater when that came out.
Did you?
Yeah.
In 84? 84?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That was a good year, too.
Yeah.
Was it 83? No, I think it was 84 because in 84 you also had The Terminator with Schwarzenegger, which is one of the greatest sci-fi films of all time.
I didn't see in the theater. I was a little too young for that.
It was rated R for a reason, so yeah.
Yeah.
A few curse words are being thrown, some violence was had. But you do get the iconic line in a trench coat, "Come with me if you want to live." I mean, come on. It's classic. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
Anywho, I'm going off on a weird tangent that has nothing to do with this episode. But hey, sometimes
That's okay.
as our good friend Dr. Emmett Brown says, where we're going, we don't need roads. So
I saw that one in the theater too. That was actually, I think, for my birthday. I saw that in 85.
85?
The summer of 85. I'm pretty sure that's when that was. I know it was like my birthday. That was like my thing for my birthday is to take, a few of my friends were allowed to go and see it.
If I had a DeLorean, I would want to go back and see opening weekend, that original film, and see the hype that surrounded it in the first few weeks. I would have loved that. It's brilliant. It's great. And by the way, I posted a question to my friends on Facebook.com, and I said, what are 5 movies that you consider to be, and by the way, this word is open to interpretation, perfect? What are 5 movies that you consider to be perfect? Like, it doesn't need any editing. The characters are great. The editing is perfect. The directing is great. Like, everything around it is just so good. It doesn't need to be changed. And I said one of the 5 movies was Back to the Future. I think that's a perfect movie.
That is a good choice. That's a good choice. That's a good choice. I'd probably put Star Trek 4, the one with the whales.
That's the Voyage Home, if I want to say.
Voyage Home, yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know, because as much as I love, there's so many movies I love. Perfection is
hard.
That's hard.
And everyone
Can
defines
it be a non-science fiction movie?
It could be any movie you want.
50 First Dates.
Ooh, a Sandman and a Drew
movies.
Barrymore pick.
Yeah, I love that movie so much, and I love them in The Wedding Singer too.
That's the OG one, yes.
But, yeah.
51st
I'd have to
Date.
think about that. We did on, so I have a podcast too, and we definitely did our favorite movie. We did an episode with our favorite movies. And when we did that, I specifically left all the Star Trek movies off of the list because I couldn't compare Star Trek movies to other movies. I had they're 2 separate things.
That's okay. I don't mind that. But yeah. Just to catch everyone up here on this episode of And I Quote, we're talking about 5 movies we consider to be perfect. I said Back to the Future was one of them. Speaking of the 80s, I don't know if you remember this one or not, but Adventures in Babysitting with Elizabeth Shue.
I remember it. I wasn't really into it because I was still more science fiction fan. So that wasn't my thing. I remember seeing it and not necessarily, it's not my thing.
Cup of tea. Yeah, no, it's okay. Yeah. It's okay. I threw that one out as one of the. By the way, this was just some of the first 5 movies that came to my mind. I'm not saying that these are the ultimate top 5 perfect movies. I'm just saying that these are 5 movies that I consider to be perfect. Adventures in Babysitting was another one. 1942's Casablanca was another one. Humphrey Bogart, Ingrid Bergman, Paul Henry. Perfect. That movie is just, here's looking at you, kid. I mean, come on. Yeah. That one was. Which one?
Sorry, I didn't mean to utter it. Contact.
Oh, with Jodie Foster. And was McConaughey in that? I want to say McConaughey. Yeah. Long before the McConaissance, but yeah, McConaughey was in that. I liked it, but I was disappointed in the ending. I didn't like the ending. I thought the ending could have been a lot better and more revealing than what we got, in my opinion.
Yeah, I understand that. I understand, but I don't think I would. If we're using that definition of perfection as something we wouldn't change, I wouldn't change anything about that movie, even though. Yes, maybe it would have been nice to have some more answers. I don't think I would change the movie for it. I think it was kind of cool because it lets you think and have discussions about it and all that stuff,
That's certainly one of that's certainly one for Adeena here on this episode of Anti Quote. Another one I tossed out to the masses was, I'm trying to think of what it was. The Terminator from 1984. I think is a perfect movie from beginning to end with Schwarzenegger and company. That's a perfect movie. Trying to think, which am I missing one? I think that's all of it. Am I? What was the? Trying to think. What was another one? I think that was it. I can't think of the other. Yeah, but anyway, if anyone else has thoughts on this, let us know in the comments. Let us know in the chat. What are 5 movies that, in your mind, from where you're standing, where you're sitting, what do you 5 movies that you consider to be perfect? Let us know in the chat. Let us know in the comments. I'm very curious to hear your answer because there is no right or wrong way to answer it.
I've got one more, which I think might be my 5th. There's this movie called IQ that starred Meg Ryan and Tim Robbins. It was also from like 1992 or so.
Never heard
and Meg Ryan plays Albert Einstein's niece. And it's Walter Matthau plays Einstein, but it's not about him. It's about her. It's this cute little. It's really a love story set in Princeton, at the Institute for Advanced Study where Einstein folks were. And some of the details are like eerily right in terms of like him and their lives and everything. And then some are just are not completely right, but it was so cute. And yeah, I would say if we're going for perfection, as in things we wouldn't change and movies that we would love to watch over and over and over again. Yeah. IQ.
I never heard of this.
Great little movie.
I'm gonna have to make a note of this or get a link to it. If it's streaming somewhere, please let us know in the chat. But my goodness, that's interesting because we've heard like you hear nothing but Einstein was this and Einstein was that, but you don't really hear his niece. Oh,
well, I don't think he didn't really have a niece who was at the Institute for Advanced Study.
Okay, so this was like a what if scenario.
Yeah, it's a fictional story.
It's an Elseworlds type thing.
Yeah, it's so cute. Yes.
Okay, all right. I'm gonna have to write this one down. Meg Ryan. Okay, because one of her '90s movies, I think, was City of Angels with Nick Cage. That was another one she was in.
Yeah. I mean, she's been in a whole pile, but that's definitely my favorite of hers.
All right, I have to keep that in mind. But even so, we're talking about we're talking with Adeena here on this episode of Anti Quote. Don't forget to like and share this video with all of your closest friends because you're going to like the way you look after watching or listening to this episode. I guarantee it. Now, you mentioned something about the things you've been a part of and some of the things you've written. I got a thing here. This is called Robots Everywhere. So I'm just curious, what exactly is the Robot Galaxy series? What is it?
Well, you're looking right at book number 2 of it. So my main character, Ruby Palmer, she's a 19-year-old human. At least she's 19 years old when it starts out in book 1, which is Crazy Foolish Robots. And well, there we go. And yes, it does not actually say book 1 on the cover. That's a whole other story. But yeah, so essentially she gets kidnapped by these alien robots. And, the normal trope, the normal cliche is aliens or robots or anything is they're coming to take over Earth. And well, these guys aren't. They have their own problems. And she winds up helping them with their problems. And once she solves their first problem in the first book, then they go on to have other adventures. So this is the first book. Robots Everywhere is so in the first book, they go to the robots' home planet and she helps them. In the second book, okay, spoiler alert, they're still doing more things on their planet and she's helping them. In the third book, you can kind of get, that's the fourth book.
Whoops, sorry. Didn't mean to give away spoilers. Sorry.
No, it's okay. The fourth book is coming out in a month and it's already it's up for pre-sale. So yeah, the cover is available. When the third book, which is Silly Insane Humans, they're back here on Earth and in our solar system. And then the fourth book is 11 little robots, and I'm not saying anything else about it.
Yeah, sorry, but there
is
the
cover. I'm so happy. I'm so I just got back pretty much my near final-ish edits from my editor this week. And I just went through and I got to do my final read through and she'll do a final cross eyes.t's. We're going to have, I have a email mailing list and I'm going to be letting them know that an ARC is ready. An advanced review copy will be ready in like a week or two. And I'm excited because it does close out the series. Although I might come back and do some side novels in this universe at some point. I have several outlines for those. But it's been great. It's the feedback I've gotten. I'm just so happy that people enjoy it, that was kind of the point is I want to put something out there that's not dystopian, that's not depressing. I wanted to put something that's kind of light and fun. And that's what this is all about. Little educational. It's a little bit of STEM education built in there too.
And speaking of STEM, and for those of you maybe wondering, STEM is an acronym that stands for science, technology, engineering, and I believe mathematics.
Yep. Yep.
So from your standpoint, what does STEM mean to you?
Well, from my standpoint, it's essentially my whole life. My whole life. From a young age, I'd been programming computers. Thank you to my dad, and I was always destined to go into some kind of engineering or science. When I was really little, I thought it might have been computer science and robotics, but then as I got a little older, it was space exploration is what drew me in. But I wound up majoring in physics and astronomy in college, and I've worked in the aerospace industry ever since. A little break in there when I got burned out and opened a retail store for 2 years, but that's again another story. But yeah, so I've been working in aerospace for more than 25 years and helping other, especially at this point, I talk to a lot of college students, a lot of high school students, help get them interested and excited, especially because of what's going to be happening in the next few years with going back to the moon and thinking about going on to Mars. So yeah, it's STEM is everything, and it's everywhere. It's the technology we're using to hold this conversation right now, so it's everything.
Rock on, rock on. Now, for someone who may be trepidatious about whether it's pursuing something in STEM or learning more about STEM, because for some individuals, science or even mathematics is very difficult. It can be very difficult for them to grasp, I should say. So for someone who's interested in learning more about STEM, or maybe somewhere down the line pursuing a career in STEM, what would you say to that individual who is hesitant or maybe struggles with science and math?
Yeah, well, so there's a lot of different ways you can go. And I recently gave a talk to some high school students where one of the things I was telling them is when we think about like upcoming space exploration, like NASA's return to the moon, their Artemis missions.
Yes.
No matter what you're interested in, there's a place for you in space. Okay, you're interested in mechanical engineering. Well, we got to build things. You're interested in chemistry or chemical engineering. Well, we got to have propellants and fuel and all these things. But you're interested in medicine and biology, that's going to be big in space. And well, what if you're interested in other things that are not directly engineering? Well, what if you are actually interested in accounting? Well, there's all these companies, they hire accountants, they hire lawyers, they hire artists and writers, because communicating what we're doing is a big deal too. So no matter what you're interested in and what you feel you're good at, there is an overlay of that with the space industry. It might be a little challenging to find it, but there is an overlay. But now for people who are interested in engineering, some of the engineering and science, is realize that there are absolutely some sciences that are math heavy, for sure. But there are some that aren't. And one of the things that I do at work these days is I'm technically what we call a systems engineer. My formal title is mission architect, which is just a fancy title of saying I'm an old systems engineer. I'm like old enough that they had to give me some kind of fun title. But systems engineers, we deal with things that some of them still do math heavy stuff, but a lot of us don't. We are working on requirements. We are working on, plans and like test plans and all this stuff that is more like language focused than actual what you think of as math and equations and all that things. And one of the things I tell people so even though I majored in physics, and even though a lot of my career did involve computer science and that stuff, I was a terrible student to begin with. And also there got to be a point, I did find, and math was not a problem for me, all through grade school. But when I got to college and got into some of the more advanced classes, I started to struggle too. But so I tell people, you don't have to be a straight A student to be doing this. A lot of people look at rocket scientists and us and think, oh, well, yeah, all had been perfect straight A students and school was no problem. Like, no, school was a problem for a lot of us. And I'm not alone with that. So don't let any of these things stop you if this is what you want to do. And that's what kind of got me through is I wanted to do this. So bad grades wasn't going to stop me. Yeah.
Well, with all those great statements being said, I mean, what we have to say to that is simply this.
Yes! That's awesome!
It just is. Mic drop moments for Adeena here on this episode of And I Quote. And don't forget to like and share this video with all of your closest friends. She is a sci-fi author and STEM advocate extraordinaire. My goodness gracious. I will say that. So is it fair to say, Adeena, that you are the Miss Frizzle to someone else's Arnold and Carlos and Ralphie and Keisha and all those other students out there?
If anyone were to say that, no one's ever asked me that, and nor has anyone come up to me and said that I was, but that would be like the most amazing compliment if anyone ever did, if anyone ever walked up to me and said something like that. Now I have worked with a lot of, college interns at my job and folks who just came out of school. I've been doing that for several years, and I've definitely gotten great feedback from them, a lot of thank you and everything. But if anyone said that to me, that would be amazing.
Just thought I'd throw that out there because
yeah, so you know how to impress me or make an impression is saying something like that and meaning it.
Yes, exactly. That's what I was getting at. So with all these wonderful, wonderful things that you've done and the things that you're going to do moving forward, have there been any special memories for you from being at events or conventions, whether you were there as a vendor or there as an attendee?
Oh gosh. So when I was in high school, so I grew up outside of New York City. And so when I was in high school, and this was in the late 80s, early 90s, I went to a lot of conventions in Manhattan. And at the time, being a high school student meant I was broke. So I could, afford the admission, and that was pretty much it. So I don't actually have many autographs or photographs from that time. Well, and photographs, this is before we all had, cell phones with cameras. So I don't have a lot of, I guess I'm going to say, tangible evidence that I saw some of the people I saw. And I'm kind of sad that I really didn't do more to, I guess, capture at least my own memories there. Like I saw DeForest Kelley, so Dr. McCoy from Star Trek. He was from the original series, he was my favorite. And I saw him, which was amazing. But I also I didn't appreciate this at the time because I was going to the conventions for Star Trek, but there was one that Isaac Asimov was there, and it didn't complete. I saw him speak, but it didn't, and I knew who he was, but something about it, and I think just because I was young, I was a teenager, it didn't register to me how amazing this was. And I think he passed away. It was like a year or so later, because he was old and he was sick at the time. So, there's all these things I don't completely appreciate. So, and then for many, many years, I didn't go to conventions just because of life and kids and stuff. And in the last couple of years, I've started going again, partly because I've been doing a lot of speaking as one of the science participants. I kind of crossed the boundary of speaking for science or speaking as a writer. And it's been wonderful, talking to people about science and and the fact that that those audiences, even if they're individuals that they're not working in science themselves, they're just very supportive and interested, which is fantastic. And now I've been much less shy about meeting some of my favorite celebrities, which has just been amazing. And so I briefly met Gates McFadden, who it's interesting to watch the Next Generation over the years, because when I was a teenager watching it, I identified more with Wesley, and she was the doctor mom. Now I am several years older than her character was with kids of my own. So when I rewatch Next Generation, I'm Wesley's a kid and I'm an adult, and I'm looking at it more looking at it very differently, and more like I'm coming from this career woman mom kind of view. So meeting her was awesome. I met Wilson Cruz recently. He was a sweetheart. I met John Billingsley, who then came on. We interviewed him on our podcast a couple months ago. He's a delight. He was so much fun. So yeah, there's just been lately going to these conventions has just been such a wonderful, amazing experience. I'm so happy. I'm kind of why wasn't I doing this for so many years? Why did I miss all this?
John Billingsley was interrupting us a bit when we were interviewing Bonnie Gordon, who's the voice of the ship's computer on Star Trek Prodigy, because she was at Shore Leave last summer. And we were interviewing her, and halfway through it, maybe more than halfway through it, I know John Billingsley. He was basically talking in the third person, I know John Billingsley. I know it, because he was interacting with the fan, and he probably said something that, drew that kind of comment out of him. And Bonnie turns over, and this is on our video, which, by the way, you can find those videos on our YouTube channel at Nerd Culture Channel under the Shore Leave 42 playlist there. and she turns to him and says, "Hey, we're in the middle of something here. Like, do you mind?" And John's like, "I know John Billingsley." It's like we get it. Like,
Hmm.
give us a minute. It's
He's a trip. He was a trip for, so everyone should go listen and watch his stuff, because he's a delight. And so for anyone who doesn't know, he plays Dr. Phlox, in Enterprise, and he's just wonderful. And I think he's close. His real personality is closest to that character than anything else he's played. He's a character actor, and he's been in like 1,000 different shows, but he's usually like a bad guy, like a murderer or something, something like that. And so yeah, Dr. Phlox is it's a treat. So
yeah, and this was something he had at his booth, and I was very happy that he did when I met John Billingsley at the time, and everyone else did. I'm sure may have seen this as well. He had a print from this film called Out of Time that he was in with Denzel Washington back in 2003, and I think that's a great crime thriller. And he plays the ME, and he's also Denzel Washington's character's best friend in the movie. His name is Che. And I was like, "You have a print of this at your booth? Dude, that's awesome, because I love that movie Out of Time. I thought it was a great movie. And you play Che, you're the comic relief, you're the witty, you keep up like the witty banter between you and Denzel." And he says, "Oh yeah, working with Denzel and director Carl Franklin and everyone else on the cast, like, it was great. We had so much fun." And he signed the print because I mentioned these things to him, and he says, "To Ryan, the witty banter man, John Billingsley." Because I mentioned that when I said it to, and I was thinking, man, that's awesome. Like, he was so cool and so funny, and he loves his fans. He loves talking to them. So, John, if I ever see you again at a convention, obviously I'll talk more to you about Out of Time and somebody. And then I asked him, I said, "Hey, you were on episodes of Suits with Gabriel Macht and Patrick J.M." He's like, "Oh yeah, I'm friends with those guys. That's why I got the part, because I was already friends with like Gabriel and all of that." I'm like, "What? You were friends with Harvey Specter?" And he says, "Yeah." Had no idea. It's fun facts, ladies and gentlemen. It's fun facts. The things we learned about some of our favorite television or film actors is just amazing stuff, don't you think? It really is. Now, speaking of podcasts, which, by the way, you're currently watching or listening to something known as And I Quote, and our guest just happens to be Adeena on this episode. Don't forget to like and share this episode with all of your closest friends. You mentioned something that you do as a podcast, Adeena. It's called the Big Sci-Fi Podcast. What exactly is that podcast, and how did that all come about?
Yeah, so it's me and my 3 co-hosts, Brian, Chris, and Steve. And we talk about, every episode we cover either a specific movie, a specific series, a specific concept, or we have an interview with someone in the profession in one of these science fiction things. And, we're broadly science fiction, although we're very Trek focused, we're very Trek heavy. And so you definitely more of our conversations and things. And we also tangent quite a bit. And a lot of times it tangents right back to Star Trek. That's kind of our bread and butter. And yeah, I met these, we actually met online. We were all writing for a fan-based Star Trek thing that none of us are part of anymore. And we just came together, and we all had this idea that we wanted to podcast. And Brian, he was willing to do like the editing part, which is something that I knew I couldn't do. For like the 6 months leading up to that, I had been doing what we're doing here. I'd been guests on podcasts, and people would ask me, "Hey, are you ever going to have your own?" And I was like, "Oh no, it's too much work for me. I can't do this. I would love to, because I love chatting, right? But then when I met these guys, and with Brian taking care of the editing, it just kind of clicked. And then we just started doing it, and everything has just clicked. It's been going really well. This last week, it was just announced that we're going to be part of the Trek Geeks Network. So we're, going to be there, and we'll actually there's an upcoming convention on Long Island called Trek Long Island in late May 20th, 21st. And we're going to be there. We're going to be hosting trivia at Trek Long Island, and we'll have some other stuff happening on the stage. And then I'll also separately, kind of on my own, be part of the different science panels that are happening that weekend. So come see us at Trek Long Island in May. Buy your tickets now. It's going to be amazing guests there.
Wow. Well, congratulations on that. That is fantastic. Hope you and your friends and the crew have a wonderful, splendid time. And if you see John Billingsley, give him my best, will you?
I will. He's not going to be there, but I will when I do see him at some point.
Surprises are known to happen. So if he shows up out of the clear blue, he could walk through the door and say, "Hey, did you miss me? I did, like, yeah, did you transport in here? Like, did you, this is so-and-so at Enterprise, set us to beam up." He could have beamed there, beamed himself there. I don't know. That's so many different words and so many terminologies. I don't even know where to begin with that. But definitely have fun, and congratulations on the podcast. That is
Thanks.
fantastical
It's so much.
stuff.
It really is so much fun. It is just like I'm getting together with my friends to talk about the stuff I love to talk about, and I think we all feel that way, which is why I think it's working so well. And several people have commented on just how it sounds like they're, even though they're not part of the conversation, in just listening to it, it just feels like they are. And it's been great. And we have a Facebook group that anyone can join, just the Big Sci-Fi Podcast as a Facebook group, and wherever podcasts can be found, all those platforms. It's great. It's so much fun. It is tons of fun.
Well, that's just fantastic. Not to go off too far off the reservation here, but if you're looking for future guests and you're looking for someone to go on random tangents of Star Wars, because I know a thing or two about that, let me know. More than happy to participate in any discussions you may have about the wars. I do know a little bit of Trek, but mostly I grew up on the wars. So if you want to discuss it, I'm just throwing that out there as a for instance.
I mean, we talk about Star Wars too. In fact, we've had some focused episodes. Like we did talk about after Andor season 1, we had an Andor episode. So we go all, which is why we are the Big Sci-Fi Podcast.
It's a big universe out there.
It is a big universe.
I'd be more than happy to participate should the need arise.
Sure.
But wonderful, great. We're all good friends here, right? Everything's perfectly fine. We're all fine here now. Thank you. How are you? We're sending the squad in. Anyway, that's a line from another movie. But still, I digress. Adeena, I want to let you know that this episode of And I Quote and every episode of And I Quote, and before I say that, if you have any questions for Adeena, let us know in the comments. Let us know in the chat. Whether you're watching this live or on the replay, thank you so much for being here. We do greatly appreciate it. But this episode of And I Quote is indeed powered by our good friends over there at Poddex. Now, Poddex are the hottest new tool for podcasters looking to have more meaningful conversations or simply gamify their podcast. You simply shuffle up the cards, you ask a question, and you let the content roll. Get yours today at poddex.com and use that promo code Ryan10. That's RYAN10, Ryan10 for 10% off your order. You're not going to want to miss out on that opportunity. And I can see Adeena made a note of that. Fantastic, because your podcast people are going to love this. So with that being said, our friends at Poddex want to know, Adeena, if you were captain of a ship, what would you call it?
What would I
What would you call the ship? If you were the captain of a ship and you pulled a Jean-Luc Picard, what would you call your ship? What's it going to be called?
I guess the USS Adeena is too self-serving, so not that. The USS Crazy Foolish Robot, after my book.
There you go. Even better. We'll keep it simple.
Slightly less self-serving, but yeah.
Yeah. It's that's no problem. There's no issue with that. And feel free to let us know your thoughts on these questions powered by our good friends over there at Poddex in the comments or in the chat. Poddex wants to know, what do you consider yourself an expert at?
Me in particular. I mean, oh gosh.
Yeah, it could be anything.
Talking. I do, at work, I do consider myself an expert in certain, systems engineering, computer science, even actually artificial intelligence kind of stuff. But in life, talking, managing my time, I'm a time management expert. That's the one. Yeah, that's the one. I'm going with that. That's my final answer.
No lifelines are needed here, Regis. That was a good game show back in the day too. That's one of the better game shows we've had
when
in the
that
last
came
20,
out.
Yeah, in the last 20, 30 years, Adeena, that's one of the better game shows we've had, in my opinion. Yeah, and there were DVD game versions of it. There were PC versions of it. There were PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 1 versions of that game. Anyone remember those video game systems when we were kids? Yeah, I do. With that being said, what antiquated invention do you still use, Adeena?
A manual can opener. That's the first one that popped in my head. Antiquated invention. I don't have a flip phone. Oh, I still do have a landline. I have a landline.
There you go.
Yeah, but for a good reason. I had an emergency. I had gotten rid of the landline, and I had an emergency one day, and my cell phone was on the fritz, and I had a legit emergency. My older son was 9 months old. We were home alone. I actually ran out with him in my arm like this to my neighbor was a cop at the time. And I didn't know if him or his family were home, but I bolted out the door screaming at the top of my lungs, help, because I didn't know if they were home. I didn't know if someone would hear me, but I thought my son was choking to death and I couldn't do anything. Yeah, I couldn't do. So I ran to them. Anyway, he was fine. Everything's fine. This is like 12, 13 years ago. This is a long time ago. But the next day I signed back up for a landline.
Wow.
I didn't want to be in that situation ever again.
Mm.
It's kind of a sad story, but everything was okay. But in the moment, I didn't know.
Wow. That's close call, but glad everything is fine and the family is good, which is the most important thing, that everybody is okay in that regard. With that being said, Poddex wants to know, if you were musically inclined, who would you want to have a private jam session with?
Do they have to be alive today?
Could be alive or dead. It doesn't matter. You can interpret these questions however you wish.
Okay. I really like Janis Joplin. I'm a classic rock. I'm very much a classic rock person. So I'd say Janis Joplin was the first name that came to my mind, and Frank Zappa is the second.
Favorite song by those two different artists?
Yeah. And I'm slightly musically inclined. Although in the last decade, not that I had any great skills, but I used to play a couple things, but not to any great skill. But I haven't really been playing anything in the last decade. Just not enough time to do all the things.
Well, sidebar here. Favorite Janis Joplin song?
Me and Bobby McGee.
And favorite, what was it, Frank Zappa song?
I don't know if I can say the name on air.
Okay, well then we'll let that one go. You can tell me in the green room. But with that being said, all good, no problem with that. If you have any thoughts about these questions from Poddex, if you're watching or listening to this episode, let us know in the comments, let us know in the chat. What words, Adeena, do you always struggle to spell correctly?
Well, see, given that everything has, you correct you as you type, I don't know. I spell them all correctly. However, I do notice, because from my editor, my habit is to put an apostrophe for IT apostrophe S. My habit is to always put the apostrophe there, whether or not it's needed. So I have to catch that. We have to catch that on editing. I put too many apostrophes in my IT apostrophe S. So it's not quite a word spelled wrong. It's more of a grammatical error, but I always get that. Again, not intentionally. It's just I think I'm trained. My muscle memory is IT apostrophe S.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay.
Yeah.
Words, and then the apostrophe comes, and then
you
got a letter or so after it. However they would choose to go about it. What advice would you give to aspiring writers?
Write and finish what you write, which is basically Robert Heinlein's advice that I agree 100% with. I think is the best writing advice ever. Is you have to finish what you write, to start writing, and then finish what you're going to write.
Rock on. Okay, I can get with that. Well, I want to take this opportunity to say thank you to Adeena for being our guest on this week's episode of And I Quote. We'd greatly appreciate it. Adeena, where can the person watching or listening to this follow you on social media and everything that you have coming up?
Okay, well, you have the link tree. That is the best place to get like all the things. Linktree Adeena, and then my first initial last name. But go to Amazon and just look up for Crazy Foolish Robots, and you'll find all the books. And of course, I am active on Twitter and Facebook and such. But just go here, and then go find the Big Sci-Fi podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. That's it.
Fabulous. Well, thank you so much for being here, Adeena. I do greatly appreciate it. My name is Ryan. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at RyanRPM5. All the links to where you can follow myself, the rest of our projects here at Neuroculture Channel, and Adeena are located within the description of this video. So be sure to check out those links when you do have an opportunity. Also, I want to let you know that we are this close to hitting 1,000 subscribers on this channel. Once we do, we're going to throw the biggest celebration and a live stream event that YouTube and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson has ever seen in his entire life / career. And we're going to have special guests. We're going to have returning favorites. We're also going to have exclusive giveaways here on the show. So make sure you tell all your friends about us. Tell your family members. Tell everyone you know. In the STEM community, folks, STEM is a big community. So tell everybody, tell every single person that we get our nerd on this channel at Neuroculture Channel. And once we hit 1,000 subscribers, we're going to throw a great big party. And guess what? You're all invited, and you can attend it for free from the comfort of your very own home. So There you go. It's like the PSA used to tell us way back when. The more you know. See what I did there? See that's the thing. That's the thing. Those are all the things, guys. These are all the things. But with that being said, I'm having too much fun with my words. But listen, in all sincerity, thank you all for being here. Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, smash that notification bell so you get notified when our new videos go up. And in the meantime, stay healthy, stay strong, stay safe, and remember, life is better when reading. Take a look.
Famous Faces and Funnies in Melbourne, Florida is leading the way in pop culture fun. From comic books and graphic novels to Funko Pops and collector's items, Famous Faces and Funnies has it all. Rick Shea and the professional team at Famous Faces and Funnies are friendly and knowledgeable. Whether you're looking for toys, props, collector treasures, or a new comic book, Famous Faces and Funnies is your one-stop shop. To find Famous Faces and Funnies on Facebook and Twitter, just type at FFF Comics.
Sweet dreams they placed on me inside my mind. Chance my truth, twist the past, my memories are fading fast. Am I still missed? Who do you want me to be? Am I still missed?
Author Cindy Kep is writing on the edge. Books include Remnant in the Stars, The Loudest Actions, Lines of Succession, Mindstorm, Condemned Courier, the Yerushalayim series, and Animal Eye. Find author Cindy Kep at CKOEPP.com today.
Secrets, trust, worth. The bond between souls intertwined within otherworldly intrigue. Michaela Jade brings forth the Elite Warrior series, a collection of dark fantasy romance novels set in a twisted world where power lusts in the hearts of men and devotion seduces the souls of women. Warrior's Secret, Warrior's Trust, and Warrior's Worth. Available now at authormichaelajade.com.
Good morning. Oh, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.